I'm excited to talk about my sponsors today. Gaye Lisbey's $1 Million Arbitrage group. Amazing, amazing group. This is a teacher. Gaye was a teacher. She is a teacher still. You need to learn. This is the type of environment you want to be in because she's going to help you understand why. And I think that's the hardest part of this business is understanding why. Why is the red one popular when the green one isn't? Well, there's usually a reason. And what Gaye does is probably parse that better than anybody, and she'll explain the reasons for those things. I think that's really powerful. Yes, she puts out a list. You're going to get use of that list if you get in the group. Now, here's the deal. The group isn't always open, right? So you get on the waiting list, and you can join the waiting list through my link. Doesn't cost you anything to get on a waiting list. And if you like her service, which I find that most people do, and that's why there's not so many openings, you'll be with her for a long time. And so it's amazingfreedom.com. She's part of Andy Slamon's group. Amazingfreedom.com/momentum, and you're going to get in the waiting list. That's all I can get you on right now. You can use my name and see if that gets you anywhere. But what I like about what they teach in that group are the things that are going on, the current things. I've seen a lot of stuff going on about stores going out of business. Well, here's where an opportunity is. Here's why you want to do this. Hey, be cautious about this. With Toys R Us coming out, you got to think about this. And that's the learning that you need to do. And Gaye is better than anybody else I've seen. So amazingfreedom.com/momentum will get you to the waiting list. Then hopefully it can get you in the group, and then you're going to see me in there, and we can chat anytime you're ready. Karen Locker's group, Solutions, 4 Ecommerce. Solutions4ecommerce.com/momentum. It's going to save you $50. Karen's our account manager. We recommend her to everyone because she's done so well for us. I mean, that's quite frankly the reason we've been paying her for the last few years, but she's become an important part of our team. Her and her team are so involved in our account. I just see the emails coming back and forth. Hey, we did this for you. I just saw 2 listings today, and I'm like, wait a second. Why did they show up? I didn't put any listings up. They got set off to the side by Amazon, and they reactivated them for me. You know what I mean? That's the stuff that just happens when you have a strong team, and I can't recommend Karen enough. If you use my code Momentum, Karen pays me. I don't want to hide that. Of course, we all know that. But you're going to save $50, and it's a great opportunity to really, really build out your team with somebody you can trust. That's why I recommend them. So Solutions for e-commerce, Solutions, 4 ecommerce.com/momentum. It's going to save you $50. Oh, and by the way, she's going to do an inventory health report. Why is that important? Well, guess what? Fees are going up. Is your inventory health number declining like ours is? Well, here's why, and here's what they can do. What I like is I get a spreadsheet from them, and it says, hey, here's a bunch of inventory. Here's what we recommend. And I'm like, yep. Delete, return to us, blah, 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 whatever it is, or destroy, and it just happens. That's what I like. The other thing that I have Karen help me with a lot is creating new listings. We do a lot of the research ourselves. We upload our images, and then boom, magically the listing goes live, and I don't have to worry about it. Those are the services that Karen offers. Can't recommend her enough. Solutions4ecommerce.com/momentum. Save $50. Use my code. You save $50 a month every single month, and it's a great service. Plus, you get that free inventory health report. I think it's a really powerful way. So I'm so excited how many people have been joining her because I see it, and I'm excited because the messages I get from people are saying, hey, this is great. I finally feel like I can focus on something else because Karen and her team are watching this for me, and I highly recommend her. Next up is Sellerlabs and Scope. I almost said it wrong. It's amazing. I mean, it really is amazing when you sit back and think about, hey, I want to get this product up, and it's similar to this product, and that product does well. Well, therefore, if that product does well, they have the right keywords. They have chosen things correctly. So guess what? Use Scope, and you can see all that stuff, and that's what the most powerful thing in the world is to copy somebody who's done it right. That's what you want to take advantage of that, right? I mean, it's fair to see, and so therefore you could take and apply it to your listing and immediately get that same benefit. That's what Scope does for me. Sellerlabs.com/momentum. It's going to save you $50 on the service. Oh, by the way, it's free to try. So sign up, try it, and say, oh, this is how it's done. Boom. And then the light's going to go on, and you're going to be like, man, I can get my products out there. I just can't wait. Can't wait. Sellerlabs.com/momentum. The other day, I bought another domain. Yes, I bought another domain. It's almost like I'm admitting guilt. But it's because I had an idea, and it was something that was a pretty good idea. I think it's going to go pretty far. And so what do? I go to trygodaddy.com/momentum and save 30%. So domains aren't very expensive. You get a few services. It adds up a little bit. And I usually buy 3 years. I usually buy privacy. By the way, I recommend that too. Buy that. It's not that much money, but when you can save 30%, it makes it that much sweeter. And it makes it easier when you're buying domains, and especially if you buy a bunch of domains. I am a domain collector, and so I do tend to do that. But that 30% makes it a lot easier. And I use GoDaddy because what I like is I can pop in an address I'm thinking, and it'll say, nope, try this version or try this extension, and then boom, there it is. Hey, you better hurry before it goes away. And they're right, and so try godaddy.com/momentum, save 30%. Also, I want to mention about Grasshopper. Who was I just talking to? Somebody the other day, and they were like, oh yeah, I use this company called Grasshopper. I'm like, dude, did you buy it through my link and save 30%? Hello? No, they missed that. So save 30%. It's trygrasshopper.com/momentum. No surprise there, but you're going to save 30%. And what the real cool part about that is they're using it for their private label business, and it gives them virtually a second phone on their current phone without having to get another number. They can make up a vanity number. They don't have to go and do all the grief and sign long contracts. Pretty easy stuff. And so if you're creating a brand that you want to identify, you want to look professional, you want to look like a real company, Grasshopper's a great tool. It's an app you put on your existing phone, and boom, you now have a customer service department. You now have a sales department. You now have a manufacturing division. You could forward it to somebody else. You can have it go to different voicemails, different departments, and it's all included. So try grasshopper.com/momentum, save 30%.
Welcome to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast, where we focus on the people, the products, and the process of e-commerce selling today. Here's your host, Stephen Peterson.
Welcome back to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. This is episode 318, Ken Reil. All right, I'm pumped. Yes, I get pumped. I say that a lot, but it's so inspiring. Am I just talking to one of the best dads in the world? A dad who understands his responsibilities, that he's got to be more than just the breadwinner. That was the role that we were all told that we had to be. But no, you want to be involved in your kid's life. And man, I'm telling you, he gave me the tingles a bunch of times in this conversation. The things that his kids are learning, and even more important, that he learned, which is very cool and very hard to admit as a guy, based on his experience with selling merch by Amazon as a family. They're competitive, they have their own accounts, and yet they're having success. And some of the dinner conversations all about merch by Amazon. But guess what? They're having a dinner conversation. Did you hear that? His kids are talking to him and his wife. Tell me these aren't great parents. They're actually having conversations with their kids. One of the other things, we didn't mention it in here, and I do want to add in it, he's part of Chris Green's Merch Dojo. So if you're in there taking his class, or if you're interested in it, I'll have a link to it. Join it, because Ken is one of those coaches helping people through that. So I don't want to miss that, because it's important. And, again, you have to buy time sometimes, and you have to take training. And anything Chris Green does, I'm always 100% supportive of, because he's just a phenomenal individual who gives a lot. So this is a very interesting episode, because if you've been thinking about finding a way to get your kids involved in your business, this might be a way. Or at least it might be an approach to getting your kids involved. And I think Ken and his wife have done a phenomenal job. Let's get into the podcast. All right, welcome back to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. Very excited about today's guest, because I think today's guest is an example of what you can do, what you can reinvent yourself, but in the meantime, really take an approach to family life. I mean, to me, the all-encompassing family, I always say this about our business and our personal lives mingle so much on a positive way, but this family's doing it even more. Ken Reil. Welcome, Ken.
Good to be here.
Is that a fair statement? It's completely intermingled in your whole life.
Everything with our family now it's intermingled with.
And it's a family, is it 5? Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's a family of 5. And did I watch this TV show where basically all 5 of you have your own business?
Yeah, all 5 of us are involved in the Merch by Amazon world.
It's incredible to me to think that your kids, which are how old?
Right now, I've got a 14-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 19-year-old.
Okay, so all 3 of those, well, without the Amazon business, let me ask this question. What would you and your wife have suggested to your kids what they need to do with their life? What was the normal track that you were going to put them on?
Well, it is part of the track they're on now even, is get an education and get a part-time job and learn how to do your chores around the house and hopefully get on to college and establish yourself with a job.
Okay, so go to college. Is that an absolute in your mind? Was it?
No, not so much, because I actually never did finish my college degree. I've got part of the way through, and then I got involved in a job and got involved with real life. But I'm of the sense that whether you go to college and get a degree and get into the workforce, or a trade, or even an entrepreneur, are all ways that people can do well.
Yeah, you said something earlier. You didn't finish, but you got an education. So I mean, that's where I always get to, is that I use this example that about half of your education is generally not related to what you're learning, what you're going to school for. I'm an accountant. About half of my classes weren't related to accounting. And so what about those other half? What could you have done with that time? If it was real work experience, would that have served me better? I don't know. But it's such a different world, and it's so interesting, especially with kids. Now, you got kids you got them in line now. I mean, you're not planning 20 years out. You're looking in the next 2 to 3 years. So that's a much different decision today. Can you imagine what it's like to plan for your 2-year-old today?
Oh, no, I wouldn't even want to go back there.
Yeah, I just don't know what you would do. I mean, how do you say, well, Julie, you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. I don't know. What are those jobs going to look like in 20 years, right? I mean, I don't even know.
Well, and things change so fast today. Within a year or two, things can completely turn around. So you have to be able to adapt, and you have to be able to pivot.
I think that's a good point. You are not a designer by nature. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. I've always been a bit of a geek and always been kind of, tied into computers and things like that. But my background actually was in science and going into the hazardous waste management in the oil field of Alberta.
And so when you think about what you did then, is any of it relevant to what you do today? I mean, did that allow you, I mean, was it math? Was it, I don't even know. I mean, did you see spectacular land and saw the beauty of the world, and therefore you have an appreciation for it, and then that translates to art or something like that?
No, not really. More.
That's funny. I want to see a connection between that and what you do now, and I'm struggling to find one there. That was a stretch.
There really is no connection. I managed in the gas and oil sector, and it was a good job. It taught me a lot of things. As I said, I didn't finish my school. I was taking school as I had gotten involved in the business, but I got into management, and, a lot of the training was in the job. And within 3 or 4 years, I was interviewing people with master's and doctorate degrees, and here I am with basically on-site training. And, there came a point where I had to make a decision what I wanted to do with my life, whether it was, continue on managing or maybe start my own consulting business, which I'd thought about. And before long, a friend of mine asked me, would you like to move to Vegas or Fort Worth or maybe Winnipeg, Canada? And I said, what for? He says, well, I got into this sign business, and we're interested in people that can manage for us. And the rest, I guess you could say, is history from 2004 on. So
he recognized your management talent and saw that might be applicable to a sign business. Did you have to have, did he say, well, can I see your art degree? Can I see your graphic design degree? What are your skills in that field? Or did he say that stuff can be taught, and we really need somebody who knows how to run or lead, I guess would be a better phrase, a business?
Correct. He knew there was never even a question whether or not can you draw, can are you a graphic designer? Can you use digital programs? That was all expected that they would teach. The main ability you needed was to be able to build a business, and for a sign business, get out on the street and hustle and build a network and cold calling people and building upon the service factor and things like that. So
I mean, would you consider yourself a salesman?
Very much so.
Oh, okay.
I very much enjoy the one-on-one interaction with customers.
So that's a skill set that came from somewhere. Where did that come from?
That came from the oil and gas sector.
Ah, we found the connection. Oh my gosh.
There
it is. I knew there had to be something there. So yeah, that's fair. I mean, so if he recognized, because you met those people, you just know they could sell, ice to an Eskimo, as a phrase goes, right? I mean, you could see that. So you're one of those guys.
Of course.
So do you think that, looking back, could you have gone into any sales job? Did you have that ability?
I could have, but I wouldn't have wanted to.
Well, what made this one attractive to you? Vegas? I mean, made it
being my own boss, being
Really?
able to control my own destiny, that kind of a thing. So.
Did you come from a family of entrepreneurs or anything in there that would lead you to believe that working for someone is not as nice as working for yourself? Or where'd that belief come from?
Actually not. There's no real, breakout entrepreneurs in my family. I come from a family where both my mother and father were high school teachers.
Oh, how interesting. So when you look back now, did you know that you were meant to be an entrepreneur? I mean, when you think about it.
I look back at it and I think it was the right thing for me.
Huh.
And sometimes you find things in life that come across your plate that just they fit, right? The puzzles of the picture come together, and you kind of found what you were supposed to be doing.
And when you think about the alternative, I mean, I don't know how the oil and gas industry is. I know it's up and down a lot, at least in the United States. What would your career look like had you stayed with it, do you think?
I would have done fairly well with it. I would have seen myself more going into, business for myself still.
Okay.
Probably doing environmental consulting with a lot of the bigger corporations.
And that's where that sales background would have, or sales skills would have come in. Okay, that's interesting. It's just neat to see. I always like to see how people get from one place to another. And so he recognized not only your management, your sales ability. So you go into sales in Vegas, and this is a brand new location, not open, not an established one taking over. Is that correct?
Actually, it was a newly established one. It had been there just about a year, and the current owner was completely struggling.
Oh. And what were they struggling with? I mean, were they not a salesperson? Were they just a buyer thinking that, hey, all I have to do is buy a business and it runs itself? Or what, when you look at that?
They had the employee mentality. They wanted to be somebody that could be told what to do and, cruise with a job, but the ability to go out and meet people face to face and build a business and build the relationships was probably the weak point.
Now, were you a one-person shop or did you end up having a staff?
It was myself. That was
Really?
kind of the beauty of the business was, I could run it from home, and that's what enticed me. And I could be closer to my family, and I could learn these things and build a relatively good business that has
Did you
some
have
value.
these machines in your home, or was it outsourced where you would just, you were the salesperson, maybe graphic designer, and then the rest comes from someplace else?
No, we actually had the equipment for the business. It was a rental business, street signs that would be rented out to businesses, and you had everything. It was all an all-in package.
Wait, now what does that mean? So I don't understand what that means. Is that like where they put up a barrier and it says, street fair or something like that? I don't understand what that means.
No, in Canada, where the business originated, there's quite a prolific street sign business, temporary rentals. And they're meant, like, say you pass by a pizza shop, you see the temporary sign that they've rented out front to say, hey, special this weekend is, and trying to drive that traffic in off the street. So it's a rental sign business that they were trying to break into the U.S. with, and some intricacies that are a little different down here. But it was an interesting take that allowed you to understand what graphic design was, what layout was, how conventional signs work, and to have all that as a kind of a turnkey.
How long did it take you to get that general skill set to be able to start cranking out signs?
I had it going pretty good because within about a year and a half, I'd split the franchise in half.
Because it was doing so well and it made sense to pair it off. Okay. And so the skill set that you brought there, other than sales, do you think it was the computer ability? Because you had said you dabbled in computers and you just always been a techie guy.
Yeah, it definitely helped. It made the transition very easy. I had also played around with some website creation, and I'd always played around with Photoshop, and it was something that interested me. It wasn't so much that I could draw a stick man, but it was something that had my interest. And one thing you'll learn about me, if I'm interested in it, I can get very passionate about it.
Again, it just had Helen Kinson on said the same thing. She wants to stay interested. If she does, then she does well with it. Otherwise, you kind of drift away from it. Another merch person. So if you haven't figured out, Ken is a merch person, and we're going to talk about that in a few moments. But I want to get to how you not leave, because I think you still have the sign business. Is that correct?
I do.
Okay.
I do, but
so how do you
let it go.
how do you let that go and get into Amazon merch? Is there an in-between in there?
There's not a lot of in between. I'm actually taking a hard look at selling it off. But part of the sign business, you're very involved. It's not something that you can just sit back and let the business come. You have to be involved with your customers and on the street and selling. And so, if you don't do that, I'd better just look at selling off the business.
Did you lose interest in it, or did you find something else?
In some ways, I've lost interest in it because I enjoy what I'm doing more, and I've kind of found my groove. Plus the fact that I live in Las Vegas, and if you can imagine how hot the summers are.
Oh, it's brutal.
A lot of this is outside work. This is out in the 110-degree heat.
But it's a dry heat, Ken. It's a dry heat. Yeah, right.
As the flesh is burned off.
Yeah,
the bone, right?
But it was dry at least. Yeah, we there's ASD we always try to go to, and they're always trying to get me to go in August. I went once, and I'm like, oh my God, what is this? I can't even go out in the sun, and then all of a sudden my white skin is like burnt to a crisp, and I'm like, what was that? It's an oven.
Yes.
So
that wasn't humidity.
No, there was no humidity. I'm not liking humidity, but I must admit I have a different appreciation for it after visiting Vegas in August. I agree with you. I don't think we think about it, all those trades and everything else that makes that city hum has to operate in that wicked weather.
Yeah.
So when did you find out about merch, and when did you say, this would be something I could add on to what I'm doing?
I found out about merch right at the very beginning in September of 15, but how I got interested in it probably backs up a little further, because tied into the sign business, it became a natural that customers, you found that, hey, I need other kinds of advertising. I need business cards. I need T-shirts. I need apparel. I even broke out into decorative window tint. And
cool.
What happened was it just naturally progressed. And as I was online learning about these things, I started to realize that there's print on demand, and there's ways that I can integrate, printing within the apparel business very easily into my business. And in some ways it became a bit of a hobby, seeing what I could earn online.
And this was separate from the franchise at that point, right? You were adding these
Correct.
on yourself. They didn't offer these services, so you get coffee mugs and stuff. Now, were you doing the work, or were you using one of those outside companies?
I did a lot of the work, or have my own suppliers around the Las Vegas area, mainly for things like T-shirts and sweatshirts and apparel.
I mean, you didn't buy the screen printing equipment and all that kind of jazz, did you?
No.
Okay.
No,
so
I got my own accounts for wholesale. And
I think that's pretty smart. I think a lot of people probably have that equipment sitting in their place, right? They thought, oh, Ken, I'm going to make it big. I'm going to make shirts. And yet the value is in selling shirts, not making shirts, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. And so you found you were using one of these, print-on-demand companies without even really knowing that there was such a thing. Now all of a sudden it's the word, right? The POD is the big word, phrase. You didn't realize it, that you were a trendsetter, Ken. Have you ever been told that in your life?
Sometimes.
There you go. I don't get that. At my age, I don't get it.
And not so much that I set the trend, but I do latch on to things and see things that are trends and do enjoy going for the ride with them.
Well, that's clearly a skill set when you're talking merch and design, recognizing trends and then running them for as quick as you can. Because, again, it's going to be fastest to market, right? I think most people are not that. They do not recognize trends. So when you think about recognizing trends, what are you looking for? Can you give me an example of something that you were like, this is a trend, and then boom, that you were able to capitalize on that probably a whole bunch of people didn't?
Well, even going back to the early days of what I call print on demand, this concept of being able to post something online and have somebody else print it and ship it and handle everything and pay you a royalty. I can remember being on some of the T-shirt forums, just generally learning about apparel, and came across a post by the now creator of Teespring, throwing out this idea of crowdsourcing these shirts, and kind of, post it, how the Teespring and the print-on-demand model works. And I thought, that's kind of cool. And before long, I realized they actually pulled this off, and that's kind of where I started, was posting things on Teespring and learning about.
You were definitely an early adopter. It's interesting you say that, because I think most people, again, wouldn't follow that way, wouldn't be doing the work, because you said you were out there in these groups, these message boards or whatever it was, where this conversation was going on. That's research. That, to me, and this is my theory on education today, that is education, doing that work. Most people want to jump ahead and say, Ken, let me just buy the designs. Let me just, upload it for me. Let me do all that shortcuts so I don't have to do all those things, because, I'm smarter and I could just jump ahead. You're talking about actually learning and doing the work there. That's hard work, and that takes discipline.
It does, and I still say, even right now, 80% of my time is research. Regardless of what you're doing, I'm researching what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. One thing you'll learn about me is I don't like to take a lot of shortcuts in that cause. Like you talked about, hey, I can do a turnkey thing. I can hire VAs. I can hire designs. I can have somebody upload them, and everything will run itself. And sometimes that works, but a lot of times the research hasn't put in, and people fall on their face. Yeah,
and they do, because everybody, it's $1 million business, right? That's what's said.
Of course.
Is it $1 million business to you?
My merch by Amazon, you mean?
Well, I guess let me pull back and say this. Is the potential to get to $1 million business when you think of print on demand? Because I want to make it broad, because I think you have to get to that concept. I don't think you can do it without that concept, but that's my opinion. But I think when you consider that you can be on what? Is there 17 different other print-on-demand sites that I know of? I know there's more, but, and then, like you said, you can expand into, still people are selling coffee mugs or phone cases or, guitar covers and stuff like that, right? Tire covers on the back of cars. That's all being printed by somebody on demand. When you think about it from that entirety, it is possible, isn't it?
Oh, it's completely possible. And the neat thing about print on demand is the viralness or the trend setting of some of these designs, and you can see millionaires made off of one T-shirt design.
No kidding.
One shirt takes off, and you've got an original concept on a shirt. It can become very iconic, and sell just tens and hundreds of thousands of copies very quickly.
Do you have an example, one that you've seen, or a company that's been able to do it?
I wouldn't be able to say an exact example, but I've even had breakout shirts of my own. I haven't had the $1 million seller or anything like that, but take a look at the solar eclipse.
Yeah, Kim Jensen is what you're thinking of, right?
I chased Kim Jensen the entire time with one of my shirts. My shirt was right up next to hers. I could never quite catch her. I had a shirt that sold $40,000 or $50,000 worth of sales.
No kidding.
So
does that blow your mind when you pull back and think about it?
Oh, it's absolutely. It absolutely blows your mind. One day you're selling, a regular trend of shirts, and all of a sudden the next day you've doubled, tripled, quadrupled, and you're saying, where the heck are these people coming from?
Well, let's go back to that. When you think about what you did, you were chasing Kim, but you still had incredible success.
What was it that made that stood out? And you're going to be like, duh, Steve, if I knew that, I'd have $40,000 shirts on every one, right? But I mean, there still has to be a pattern, a common sense approach to pattern. So you were one of the first to market, right? I mean, I would assume that's one of the things, right? So you recognize a trend, again, a skill set that you have, right? That's what you said. Yep. So you recognize a trend, you're one of first to market, first mover's advantage, right? What else would you say that would be a skill or something that helped you get there when you think about it?
Bringing something different to the table.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
And what's different mean to you? I mean, because a lot of the shirts I see are just plain and they have words on them, or not much original art, although they're artists, they're talent. I'm not talent, but what would be different for you?
I think the difference is in the research that you do.
Yeah, you're back to that.
I mean, I keep coming back to the research side of it. Is understanding who your audience is key. Understanding, some simple things like colors and trends and sayings, and are you tied in with who you're trying to sell to? Because if you are, then it becomes very easy on the design process to put something in front of them that has a chance of selling.
John Lee Dumas says you always, in the podcast world, you always have to talk to your avatar. Who is that person that you're speaking to? And then that's who you talk to, and you don't worry about everything else. And then magically, boom, you have success, right? It's like a formula. So you're saying the same thing. So when you're doing that solar eclipse shirt, you're thinking of somebody or whoever that is, and you're designing it for them and them alone. And then they happen to be a whole bunch of them? Is that kind of...
Correct. You realize that one person you're designing for is a whole bunch of people because you've already identified who those people are and what you're trying to bring to them. So as I said, it makes the design process much easier to accomplish and the success much easier.
Let me dig a deeper on that one because that's interesting. Who would have you thought it was? Because obviously you got it right. Who did you think was going to be the eclipse person?
That I would kind of keep to myself.
Okay, that's your secret sauce. Okay, but that's fair. No, I appreciate that. The fact that you know it and you're aware of it is very cool. To me, that's very, very cool because, again, you're back to that research. I have a secret way of research, Steve, and I'm not telling you. I get it, but discipline...
It's not even so much a secret way to research. It's just simply a market that you understand has a fascination, and you've identified a niche or a trend, a market within that group, and even to this day, it's a very lucrative market as well. So,
would you? Let's see if you'll give away this secret. When you think about points of interest, right? So when you just said that unique group, would you say there are 5 or 6 or 7 unique points about them that helps you isolate them down into that pile of people? Do you get what I'm saying? I'm not sure I'm saying it right. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
How many points would you say? Because I think that's a fair thing, right? You just don't say, okay, they're male. Boom, that's point 1. They're 20 to 30. That's point 2. And you just keep going, oh, they happen to have blonde hair, and they like combs or they grow beards, and they like oils, and they like blah, 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 right? How far do you parse that down? Is it a 10-point, a 6-point?
There's usually 4 or 5 main points, but when you really dig into, I guess as you would call a niche or an area that you're going after, it's, as I get back to it, it's understanding that niche and being able to design to it. Because you were talking about putting yourself in the place of your avatar. I like to look at it as putting myself as if I'm a buyer. Like sometimes when they talk about copywriting, you want to put yourself in the place of the buyer. Like you know exactly who that person is, and that really is key and fundamental, I think, to having success in this.
It's like a conversation, right? You're having a full conversation that they're interested in.
It is, and you've got to think from their perspective. Would this person? Am I one of these people in this trend that would want to wear this apparel? And if you can answer yes to that question, then you start designing. And it's part of the reason that a lot of the areas that I'm in, it's not just thrown against the wall, but it's things that I actually have a personal interest in.
Oh, that's interesting. That's very interesting. So because you have an interest, therefore becomes sort of passionate, you're able to translate that because you speak the same. You're a geek, Ken. You're a geek language guy. That's it. I got you identified now. But it's interesting you say that. I was sitting there actually thinking, I'm like, you're Don Draper. You're Don Draper with the design side. You're really, because how does an image speak to a person? How does an image have a conversation with somebody? But you figured that out. You are Don Draper.
Well, I've thought very early that if the design I put in front of somebody, if their first reaction was, they don't really understand us, you've missed the boat somewhere on that, right? You've missed the ability to do that research, as I keep coming back to.
Yeah.
You have to be able to connect with them in not a seller type of a feeling, but as a buyer.
I think,
would you buy that?
One of the big challenges in this business, and this is where I think this is a fair statement, this is Steve speaking, is that we only tend to show the upside. We only say, hey, Ken, merch is the place to go. It's unbelievable. You can do millions. And yes, there are outliers doing millions. We already discussed that, right? You can outlie and get $40,000 on a shirt. But my bet is you don't have every shirt doing $40,000, right? And so there's downsides. Lots, right?
Of course there is.
How many swings do you take where you actually have a hit?
That depends. I mean, I've got a very high percentage of shirts that have sold, but that comes down to the game of print on demand and different areas such as evergreen shirts, stuff that'll be up all year, that will sell all year. They're not going to sell crazy numbers, but they're going to consistently sell over the course of time. Holidays, I mean, we've got all kinds of holidays that come in. Trends. What's the next politician that says a stupid remark, right? And everybody's got to have
somebody
it on
just said it. Yep, they just said it. Yep, there goes another one. Wait, there goes another one. But it's interesting, though, but those are where the lessons are, aren't they? And when you were talking about narrowing down that audience and figuring them out and speaking to them, how many times have you not spoken to them? And therefore, is it you getting the message saying, I thought this would connect, it didn't, let me try another message? Or does it come down to the research because you could see the ones that sold and you're like, oh, that's how they connected with that group?
Well, and see, that's an interesting one with this, because as you're doing your research, part of it is understanding what is selling within those trends, within those niches. But part of it, as I back up, is getting to know that niche like you're the buyer. And that's why my interest plays a bit of a part in it.
Okay.
There's not a lot of areas I'm in that I say, oh, that was a complete strikeout, because I already know that there's some interest. I've already got some connections with that niche. And so, maybe the design is wrong. Maybe it doesn't connect with that niche, but I know that I've got a design or two that's going to connect with them eventually.
Okay, so you figured out, hey, this is a group they're going to be solar eclipse buyers, period, right? Everybody's going to want to say they were on the gravy train or on the bandwagon. I participated, right? That's a pretty interesting thought, right? I was there, right?
Of course.
Then you're going to say, okay, my designs didn't work, but look at this person's, they are. What's different in there? They're connecting somehow. There's a different conversation. Let me adjust. Is it kind of like when you hear them talk about changing the direction of one of those giant shipping containers, ships, right? That they have to change in small degrees because it takes so much to turn that big thing around. Is that kind of the way it is in shirt design too? To get that, to get good at it, you've got to keep making these really small adjustments often to zero in, and then boom, you know your target.
I'm a little bit of a difference of opinion in that. I'm more of a pivoter.
Okay.
I like to hit the pivot and completely go off in another direction.
It's not working, you move.
Yeah, I move, and it may be in the same field of interest, but I look to try and bring something, and the word would probably be contrast. I want something that completely contrasts what the norm is out there. Because if you understand who the buyer is, you can start to piece together what that contrast is that might stand out for the buyer.
Plus, you don't want to be where everybody else is, right? You want
I don't.
Yeah.
No,
right. You want to stand out.
I don't want to be part of the flock of sheep. I want to be the black sheep out there and stand out, and not in a bad way, but in a way that you recognize as, oh, that's kind of a neat take on this. That's a neat addition to what my interest is.
Do you think, because you're not this 21-year-old, your 19-year-old probably is, you have
when you look at their approach to the T-shirt design and stuff versus yours, is it different? I would assume it is.
Completely different. They can spot trends a little quicker. They're in with the lingo. They're in with what some of these younger generation want to wear or be seen with. And of course, a lot of times, my kids will look at me and say, "Oh, that's weird."
Yeah, my wife says that every time I go out the door. She's like, "You're going to wear that?" I'm like, "All right, I'm going back to change." And I'm thinking, I thought I looked good, but then, no, you can't wear that. But that's interesting because they're growing up in an information generation. Fair, right? I mean, they know nothing. Yeah. They don't know who is the 20th president. They just Google it, and there it is. Hey, Dad, here he is, and here's his whole history, and here's blah 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 blah. Where we would have had to learn it and that kind of thing. I was hoping that you were going to say, well, you have a different wisdom, and therefore that's your strength that you bring to it that they don't have yet because they just haven't, gotten hit by a car, or fell off a curb or whatever the stupid things that we did, right? I mean, that's the reality, right? Is your wisdom an advantage in some ways?
It is definitely the ability to have had my history. Being able to deal with customers face to face. Having a totally different career, I guess you could say, has certainly
that would make
forged
sense.
some steel in the fire, right? And you know directions that you would go very quickly, lessons that they've got to learn for themselves eventually.
That sounds like a piece of advice that you just casually dropped, an innuendo there that, look, Steve, go back and look at what you were. You were an accountant in your world. You had all those stupid accounting jokes and that nobody else would get, and that might be a place to go look for designs, right? I mean, things like that.
Yeah, because you look at that example per se. You were an accountant. Well, you know all the funny jokes. Well, you also know what an accountant would or would not wear. Like, would you show up at your accountant's, whatever party at Starbucks wearing a shirt that didn't make sense? You would wear the one that connects with those other 10 accountants, and you would all laugh at it. And who cares what the people in the next table think? You guys get the joke. And that's part of this research and part of understanding what's going on. And too many people, I'll use that as an example, jump into this and say, oh, I'm going to do accountant shirts. Oh, I think I found the best phrases on the internet. They pass it off to a VA. The VA gets them a bunch of designs. They put them up and they say, why didn't these sell? Well, you as an accountant goes on to Amazon and looks at these shirts and says, wow, that guy doesn't understand what it is to be an accountant. We don't wear that color. We don't wear that style. We don't want that phrase. And I think that's some of where the disconnect is. And so that's why passions and hobbies and interests and even professions that I already have something to do with make it very easy to sell into because I'm in the perspective of a buyer.
How about this? There have been so many more people coming into merch, right? There's, when you started, how many, designs were up? I don't even know if you know those stats.
Oh, I saw times when there were, 200, 300,000 listings,
That's it. What's it now?
It's well over the million. I mean, it fluctuates. Designs are going up, and now they've got rules where, if they haven't sold for 90 days or 180 days, they come down. And so it's cyclical, but, and a lot more designs up, but the market is huge, and with the right research and the right designs, nothing has slowed me down.
You don't sound like, oh, woe is me, everybody's coming in, Steve, there's no opportunity. You're saying no, do you have to work smarter, or is this where your discipline, your consistent discipline, pretty much sounds like from day one, is paying off because everybody else is lazy, and therefore you can outwork them?
I wouldn't say everybody else is lazy, but a lot of people don't get how to formulate their plan of attack, I guess, how they go about this. And part of this, the neat thing about print on demand and a lot of things with merch is this is like a new hobby for me. I mean, I could go 16, 18 hours as if it was my favorite hobby, and even the remedial type tasks within it. The things that are fairly redundant, like uploading and over and over and over again, they don't really bug me because at the end of the day, I'm seeing the finished product, and it's something that I created and something that I had fun doing, and a lot of times can't keep me from talking about it.
Yeah, and I was going to go to the family dinner table discussion because it must be interesting. But do you feel like an artist sometimes?
Sometimes yes, but more a creator or more not so much an artist, because the interesting thing I found in the print on demand, the apparel business, you've got some great artists, but they have no idea how to sell how to sell their artwork.
You're back to being a salesman, and there's the connection right there. Love it.
Yeah.
All right, so tell me how nerdy is dinner sometimes.
It can be pretty bad when the dinner conversation is about who got their uploads done or how much you've uploaded, or some of the ideas that come up, and some of the ideas that actually get held back because you don't want a sibling to know what your idea was.
Oh, is there competitive?
Oh, definitely.
But think about this. Andy Slamans always says this about that Amazon, and we speak in FBA, but I think now it's global because there's so many places. It really is the family farm business back in the day. It really is. It's our version of that. I mean, think about, could you have had these conversations with your parents? I mean, that you guys are having now. Do you remember these kind of conversations around the dinner table?
They were different.
Right.
They certainly weren't like this, but as you said, more the family farm. I think back to my father, who was a teacher, but on the side was a beekeeper. And beekeeping goes back for hundreds of years in our family, and there was always discussions about beekeeping because me and my brothers had always come in from helping my dad tend the bees, right, and extract the honey. And so the discussion is different, but the discussion is also the same in many ways.
Yeah, but those things, just the fact that you remember that was sewn into you. Now you're doing that with your kids. Had you just kept your corporate job, and this isn't negative, and I don't mean to down anybody, but there's a side benefit you're describing. The fact that you're having these conversations and you're both interested in the same thing, I'm sure connects you in so many other ways with those kids. You're not distant from them. Do you get what I mean?
Oh, it does, and that's part of what I enjoy being away from the oil field, is I would never have come home at dinner and start talking to my kids about, what did I do on the oil lease, or what well was drilled, or what cleanup you did, because they just had no connection to it, and now you've got a connection with them.
Can you talk about any other benefits that you've seen with your kids from them owning their own business and similar business and the competitive stuff, all that?
I think the greatest advantage or thing that I've seen with them is it makes them aware of what they can and can't do. At a relatively young age. There's things that they're learning that I wish I would have learned, 30 years ago, because it would have completely changed the course of how I was effective. A lot of things I wouldn't have had to have learned. I mean, all of us have to learn these things, but it gives them an advantage. I mean, come on, I've got a 14-year-old that's been doing this for a year, and he just got into high school.
And his friends are looking at him like, "What? Let's go hang out." And he's like, "Nah, I got things to do."
Or his friends are saying, "Hey, that'd be a cool idea. We should, put it on a T-shirt." And he says, "I can do that."
Yeah, I can do that. How about this? Now you have one daughter, or maybe two, but all right. Is the playing field level for her and your two boys?
A little different there because the dynamics of all three kids is pretty wild. The differences in them. She's very, very bright. She's just finished her first year at university, valedictorian of her class. She's always done very well academically, and this is become an interesting way on the side to passively earn income while she's at school.
Well, to me, though, and now it doesn't sound like she needs it, but a family that does, she could realize she can be just as good as the boys. You know what I mean? Because think back to the day where, hey, my wife tells the story that her father, who came from Italy, so in fairness, said, oh, you can always go be a secretary. That was the phrase, and that was done generationally. I mean, it is what it is. He's a great guy, but that was the way he was raised, right? When your daughter can see, now obviously she didn't sound like she needed it, that she can do just as well as those guys and actually have sales and support herself independently, that is big. In today's young women, for self-esteem, that is huge.
It is. It's a massive thing. And the neat thing about it is actually she's got her brother saying we can be like their big sister.
You just gave me the chills when you said that. Ooh, I actually got the goosebumps because that's powerful. Now think about that. That's so different than what we've all been. It is the way it was. I'm not saying right or wrong. It is the way it was, but now we see different. So the whole family. So you've gotten a little bit of recognition for this. They actually, you kind of becoming an expert out there, right? Yahoo reached out to you for some information for a story.
Yeah, that was just recently. Yahoo Finance. There was a recent story that was out there, and I know they'd interviewed the director of the program as well, and they took a few sound bites and.
Yeah, but the fact it's still pretty cool, though, isn't it? I mean, it's got to be pretty cool. Yeah, I mean, you got a little swagger in your stuff, and then to make it on TV. I mean, I watched this, and I'll link it in this episode. You guys were quite a story on Las Vegas TV. It was a pretty good segment. I mean, it was really interesting.
Well, we actually were we had a lady from the Las Vegas Business Review reach out to us. And that story is still forthcoming.
In the newspaper.
She's actually finishing that story off. We're just finishing off a couple of the last questions. But part of that story was picked up by the Channel 13 here in Vegas, and they had us come in for a live spot early morning on Saturday. And it was about a 2-minute spot. And from that, the interviewer, the reporter, was so interested, the anchor lady, that she phoned back and said, "Hey, we'd like to actually come to your house and do a full-blown interview and have you on the 6 o'clock news." And so there were actually 2 interviews that were done with Channel 13 here in Vegas.
You got your start on your 15 minutes. You realize that?
Of course.
But what's cool, though, is your kids get to see that, too. Wait, you mean there is something special about what we're doing? You mean, wait, because the risk is that becomes just... standard stuff. You're expected, we're all doing shirts. Yeah, that's just our way. But then they realize how special that really is to have enterprising young people that want to kind of, create something. That's a big deal. Another good lesson.
Well, and they also understand that the story wasn't generated because of what Dad was doing.
Yeah.
What Dad was doing with, say, merch and with print on demand, though I was standing out, ahead of the crowd, you could say in some ways, the story really generated because they say, wait a minute, your kids are doing this? What have your kids learned? What are your kids earned? And that's where the story developed and actually took off.
Would you say that's the best part of what merch is? I mean, I understand you have freedom, right? And that's something that's attractive to you, and you don't have to go out in the heat. Very attractive to you and I both. I'm in on that one. I get that. But the family unity, the rowing together, even though there's some, little sports, metaphors there for, competitiveness, the family unity, the ability to know what's going on, to see, my bet is when you can see when your kids are off pretty easily now, right? Because you understand their temperament probably better than most dads. Would that be the biggest win so far?
Oh, the biggest win is family participation. Everybody's in on it. Everybody enjoys it. And just simply not being away from them. It's sometimes you want to separate your business from your personal life. But in many ways, if you're having a lot of fun and enjoyment from it, you like them to be intertwined.
Absolutely. I think it's a win.
You can sit at the dinner table and talk about these things, and it's not begrudgingly talking about chores. It's actually talking about, the wins and even the losses. And those are important lessons for kids to learn. Yeah,
they're not allowed to lose anymore. They should get all trophies, Ken.
I everybody needs to lose.
No, I agree with
That's
you.
How you learn.
How about this? Would you say, and this is I want you to be honest about this, what have you learned from your kids? Not the trends and all that jazz. I don't really care about that. I meant as a dad who could swallow hard and say, because you're supposed to know everything. You're invincible. You don't ask directions. Your kids are having some success. Have you learned anything from them?
Yeah, I've learned from them a measure of honesty and a measure of being able to accept when I'm wrong.
Ooh, that hurts.
Not really.
Well, it doesn't hurt now. But no, I'm serious. When you were out in that oil field or wherever you were and you came home, you weren't wrong because you had a day and blah, 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 and life happened and blah, 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 blah. But to be able to accept it and to be able to accept it with grace in front of them, you're right, I'm wrong. That's a big because that's the life lessons that you want them to learn, right?
It is. Being honest with yourself and being honest with what you're doing.
Ooh, give me the tingles again. Jesus, again. I love these family stories because, quite frankly, it's the miss with a lot of families, right? I mean, this is one of those places where, I think, dads want to, I'm speaking for myself, dads want to do the right thing. They want it, but they got a lot of responsibility. And it sounds like to me that, you've made some adjustments to help deal with that. I think it's very powerful.
Well, it's very, very hard to reach out with kids now, too, in the day and age of the internet. And this is a great way to be able to do that.
So is your recommendation, because I'm sure you get a whole bunch of people, wait, how do I get my kids involved? How do I get them interested? Have you been able to give some advice to that?
Yeah, actually I have. I have a number of people that have asked me because of the story and because of some of the interviews. They said, oh, well, what can I do to get my kids going? And I say, well, how many slots have you got on your account? What's your tier? And get them going. Get them onto the computer next to you. Get them designing. Use some of the tools that are out there and let them just throw their ideas out. And the other thing is you have to watch it because you're dealing with kids that have to be molded. They don't understand copyright. They don't understand trademark. And, help them out with that. Teach them and help them grow and just allow them to experiment. And if you've got the account, you've got the ability to get your kids putting stuff up. And that's how we started. My son came to me the one day and said, hey, Dad, can I put some shirts up? Like, can I make some money doing this? I said, yeah, let's put them on my account. And anything that sells, you can earn. So it's as easy as starting out that way.
All right. What's next for the Reil family? What do you see? It sounds like your daughter's at school. One of your sons is getting close to it. What do you think? Where do you see this business or this lifestyle business that you've created as a family going?
Just increasing. I mean, it's building it into a stronger and stronger passive income. Merch is a lot of work, but can become quite passive depending on how you build your success and build your brand. And that's another thing, is building into some brands and taking it from there and continuing on, just having fun with it.
I think about that Life is Good brand, right? That's a good example of one, that somebody took shirts and made this. That's still possible, isn't it?
Oh, of course. That's happening all the time. Because people, T-shirts aren't going anywhere, and this has become even more prevalent with everybody wants to wear their phrase on their chest, right? They want to wear what they're thinking.
It's a statement.
They don't necessarily want to walk up to you and say, this is what I believe. They want to walk past you with it on their shirt and have you turn their head and say, oh, what was that guy? That's what he thinks, and that's it. It's part of the world becoming very polarized, but it's also a good thing because people are now finding a medium in which to bring out their thoughts and their expressions, regardless of what it is, whether it's a hobby or a business or, maybe it's just a funny thing that they want to walk by with. But they're here to stay. They're not going anywhere. The trend isn't going to change and all of a sudden, nobody wants to put a graphic phrase on a T-shirt, right?
What you just described, though, is a conversation. Again, when that person walks past me with that shirt and that statement and I read it, it's a conversation, right? They communicated with me. I read it in my mind. I put my thoughts together on it. It was an unspoken conversation, but it's a conversation nonetheless, hence the reason there's the connection and the success.
Yeah, and like yourself,
That's
you
deep,
talk about
Ken. That's very deep.
Like being an accountant. You can walk up the street and have a silent conversation with every accountant on the boardwalk because of what you're wearing on your T-shirt.
Oh, Jesus. Yeah, you're right. I mean, I've never thought about it this way. You blow my mind. All right, so if somebody has more questions. Do you have a group? Am I correct that you have a group or you're part of a group or something?
I do help admin Chris Green's big Merch by Amazon group.
His Merch Dojo group?
It's Merch Dojo is on the side.
Okay.
I do some of the training with him and that, but the big Merch by Amazon Merch Life group.
Merch Life group. Okay, so I'll put a connection there.
And then Merch Success 2.0 is the one that I admin.
Okay, Merch Success.
But I would actually put a bigger punch out to a new group that I started that's called Merch Watchdogs. And it's an initiative that's not so much about designing shirts, but it's an initiative to go after frivolous trademark owners. And that's become a real problem in the industry, and there's a real passion there, and we're growing, and we're actually finding a way to beat back a lot of these frivolous trademark
Because somebody will
applications.
copy, right? They'll just copy your stuff and then put it out there and say, "Oh, you're infringing on my trademark," and it's like, no, I had this before you, right? Or copyright, excuse me. No, I was there first, right? Is that an example?
Part of it is a popular phrase hits the market, and the first thing somebody tries to do is go to the USPTO and trademark that phrase with the thought process that if I can trademark that for T-shirts, I can take everybody else down. And that's actually an incorrect way that trademark works. That is not the way trademark works.
But that was what was happening, correct?
It was and is. And it's
still
become
is.
a real cancer within the industry right now. So
And
we're attacking
You're
that head
attacking
on.
it. And so if somebody was interested in saying, hey, this has happened to me, you can join Merch Watchdogs and you can join the discussion and start being part of the solution.
Definitely. We are making a change in the industry. We've identified a way to protest these. And we are now starting to get some of these applications killed, which is good for the entire industry. We're taking it across. Originally, we started with merch by Amazon. Now we're, no. This is Etsy. This is Teespring. This is TeePublic. Anybody in the print on demand. It could be CreateSpace. It could be jewelry. It could be other classes. Because this is really, as I said, a cancer in the industry that's occurring. And I finally said to myself one night, we either sit around and complain or we go and do something. And so I put up a group, and we're closing in on 4,000 members, and we got people donating to help get lawyers put in oppositions, and people are writing letters of protest, and it's really changing things. It's really being
Very
noticed.
cool. So you that 15 minutes is getting extended.
It is.
It's going to be a little longer than that. I'm just letting you know.
It
All
is.
right. So if somebody wants to follow up with the question, what's the best way to get you?
Honestly, the easiest way is just hit me up on Facebook.
Okay. So I'll put you right there.
Yeah, tag me or send me a private message, and I'll try and get to it.
All right, so my final question I ask everyone, and I think you just give some good examples, is that, this is merch by Amazon specific. I'm going to make it that way. Or print on demand, I guess that'd be a better one.
Yeah.
A lot of us opened up those accounts when Chris Green says, hey, you should join Merch by Amazon, right? Whenever he says anything, we all just do it, right? We're like lemmings, and we all just do it. 99% of people did nothing with it, and then all of a sudden they're like, wait, this is really taking off. I better go start doing things. But they put up those shirts. They have no success. They struggle. They don't, quite frankly, they probably didn't do the work, didn't do the research, didn't do all those things. What's your advice to those people rather than walking away? Because it breaks my heart to see, because listen to the story of Ken and his family. Listen to what it can be, right? The fact they sold $250,000 collectively as a family. How many family farms do that in the first couple of years? Not many. So the fact that potential is still there, and Ken, you heard him say that there's absolutely, the demand is huge. The opportunity is great. But they walk away from it, Ken. They never see it through. What's your advice to get them past that stuck point?
The advice is they've got to enjoy it. They've got to enjoy what they're doing, and they've got to research it. We've been talking about this over and over through this conversation, is they have to put themselves in the role of a buyer. They have to be, like you said, the accountant walking down the street having that silent conversation with other accountants, because what's on your shirt connects. And I'll be the first to say some people will not figure that out. But for a lot of people, there's different ways they can go about this. It can be such things as local merch. It could be licensing. It could be somebody that's really good about crafts. It could be people that are realizing they can tie it into their Facebook group. They need to put in the time. They need to be able and willing to probably spend 80% of their time researching before they even design something.
Very powerful. Absolutely very powerful. All right, man, I wish you nothing but success. I can't wait to see where the family goes next. Thank you so much.
It's been good being here.
Guys, very cool. Isn't that a cool story? I mean, just imagine actually having a conversation with your kids and they don't have their phones in their hand and they're wow. I think there's bringing it back, that analogy of the family farm, or him and his dad and his brother talking about beekeeping and having those discussions at dinner. Now he can do that with that. I didn't get to come home and talk accounting with my kids. That wasn't something that we had, a conversation. But now the ability to have a conversation over a similar interest, how cool was that? Especially with a daughter that has similar. I mean, it's just so cool to think about that this potential is here, but it's intentional. It's Ken doing the research. You heard him say it, half a dozen, maybe more times. He's trying to beat it in me. Steve, you have to do the research. And he's 100% right. That means there's work. This is a 4-letter word. There's work here. But if you love it, that's a 4-letter word even stronger. Ecommercemomentum.com, ecommercemomentum.com. Take care.
Thanks for listening to the E-Commerce Momentum Podcast. All the links mentioned today can be found at ecommercemomentum.com under this episode number. Please remember to subscribe and like us on iTunes.